results. This is The Brian Snow Show.
Well, I hope you all are enjoying the reboot of The Brian Snow Show. I am the man in charge. And I was trying, y'all know I got to think of creative ways to introduce the guests that I have on the show. Well, this one was written for me, but I didn't know which way to take it. Because when I started researching my guests, I looked up houseofkellen.com. That's where you want to find our guests, and I'm giving lots of promotion early on this one. But then I made a discovery of a podcast called Let's Get Weird, and I thought, oh hell yeah. I even told her before we came on the air, I had a list of questions. You all know how I am. I had a list of questions. I found that podcast and tore them up. Let me bring this young lady on right now, because I'm going to warn you, if you don't like laughter, you won't like this episode, but I hope a lot of you do. Here is Marie Miller, the founder of the House of Kellen. Hello, Marie. Great to have you, my dear.
Hi, Brian. Great to be here.
All right. I gotta start with this because you touched my heart and my funny bone with the Let's Get Weird podcast. You got to tell me how that got started.
Well, I hope you're thinking of Let's Get Weird Together.
Let's Get Weird Together. That's the one. Yes. I phrased it wrong. I apologize for that. No, I just saw, you got to understand, I just saw Let's Get Weird and I thought, oh, hell yeah, we're talking about that. Tell me how Let's Get Weird Together started.
It's a passion project of mine because I like to listen to the episodes. I talk a lot about my own history on it. But it's a way to destigmatize some of the weird things that people do in order to heal or improve their life. And so that includes things like BDSM, all sorts of energy healing. I interviewed a witch doctor. We go all over the place, and we do have a lot of fun on that. So it's a lot of stories of how doing something that other people might look at you funny for or judge you for is actually like the best thing you ever did for yourself.
For me, it was always vocal. It was always voice acting, because one of my favorite vocal heroes, the late great Mel Blanc, and I absolutely adore Looney Tunes. So I surprised the daylights out of my mom one day when she called from work and I said, "What's up, Doc?" And I thought my mother was going to fall out of her chair. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, when I'm in the shower getting ready for the day, well, the cartoon voices came out. I didn't realize that my wife, who was sitting outside of the bathroom, and she is on the floor dying. And I said, when she told me what happened, it's like, oh no, something came out that shouldn't have. That got destigmatized right there, especially when she throws my favorite voices back at me.
Oh, that is awesome. That's my goal and all the work that I do is for people to be able to be accepted as whatever their version of weird is.
Now, what led you down this path? What led you to start that podcast and to work on destigmatization of a lot of weirdness? I know I use the word weird a lot, and I use it to describe myself, because my Jody asked me, how would you describe yourself? I said, there's one word I use. She says, what's that? I said, weird. And she goes, perfect. We'll be weird together. So there you go. There's your precursor right there.
I'll try to keep it brief, but pretty much like I was picked on for being weird a lot as a kid, and I just owned my weirdness. I'm like, if you're going to make fun of me, I'm just going to go all the way weird and just be the super weird one, right? I just owned it. And I'm like, how, and what other ways can I be weird? And I found a lot of power in that. And then when I got into my career later in life, I started doing a lot of trauma healing. And so a lot of what I'm working with my clients is for healing deep sexual shame, deep shame around like appearances, all these different things. And I'm like, if we can just destigmatize sex and what we want, that seems to be like the deepest pain point for people. And when you can release that pain point, it heals so many other parts of a person's life.
What was the first major thing you had to heal yourself from that told you, okay, I can turn this into my path for life and I can help others?
It's actually when this other person healed for me my daily migraines. And then on myself, it was when I was able to actually heal my heart and allow someone to actually love me.
How long did that take, and what did it take for that healing to happen and for your heart to burst open?
It took a few years because I am very stubborn, right? That's part of the reason that healing takes longer for some people, because we're really stubborn and we like to learn things the hard way.
Right.
And so it took a while for me to understand my pattern. I would say it was maybe 2 or 3 years of working really, really hard on it because I had a lot of patterns to undo.
What was the most difficult pattern you had to undo, or two of the most difficult patterns you had to undo?
So there was two things going on. I had to release the belief that love was going to kill me, and having that pattern or that belief in my body was what drew in some of the jerks. And then also my other pattern was I would find a soulmate who'd be awesome people, right? And that same belief would kind of trip, and I'd break up for them for very, very valid, in my opinion, reasons.
I thought for sure that after I came out of an abusive relationship that I would never find the one.
Yeah.
And I closed, and that was early part of 2016. I closed myself off. I was in a very dark place, and it took about the same amount of time, about 2 years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to leave a note in Starbucks, and if people find me, they find me, and if they don't, they don't. Because at that time, since 2016, I nearly lost my business. My mind was already gone because I got messed up in this abusive relationship where nobody believed me. I went to the LaPorte Police Department, LaPorte, Indiana, and they laughed at me and turned me away. Like I said, I lost a lot of clients. And then a year after that, I wound up spending a week in the mental hospital in Michigan City, Indiana. And after I came out of there and nothing still happened, and then lived with some people that did some more emotional damage.
Mm-hmm.
I finally called a friend, and I was living in Dayton, Ohio. I called a friend and I said, there's one thing you need to do. He says, what's that? I said, get me out of here. I
Mm-hmm.
got back to Michigan City and I thought, the hell with this. I'm done. I'm glad I never wrote that note, because had I wrote that note, I would not have met Jody. I
Yeah.
would not have met my Dr. K. And we spent a good 3 months really getting to know each other via emails and text messages. And finally, September 1st of 2018, I said, I have to hear her voice. And it's that
Mm-hmm.
one person, it's that soulmate that calls to you. Well, Dr. K certainly called to me. So I opened my phone and I'm calling a football game. I opened my phone, I put the phone right here. And as soon as I heard her giggle while I was in the middle of a play-by-play sequence, I was a goner. I was like, okay, she's it. She's it. She's the one. And she happily has been.
That is amazing. I'm so glad you found her.
It was
Glad
tough
you.
though. It
Yeah.
was It's the what a lot of people don't understand. And I know you can speak to this. It's very tough.
Yeah, it really is. But part of me always knew that I could find love again, that I was worthy of love, and that's why I kept moving forward. And when I recognized that like there was a pattern, I'm like, I'm just gonna have to break this pattern.
What got you to break it? What got you to take a hammer to that pattern and break it once and for all?
Just getting really fed up with getting my heart broken again. Because I had a series of over 20 years. I had a series of four different abusive relationships, and there was a lot of really good ones in between, right? But remember, I broke up with them for very rational reasons because I was afraid of
Right,
love.
right.
So it was really just being like, part of it was my health was starting to suffer, and I was actually able to break all these patterns through doing the training for the job that I now have. So a lot of it happened like in Theta healing teacher training.
Talk to us about theta healing. Where'd you discover that?
That's how my migraines were cured by someone who later became one of my friends. It is, we go into the theta brainwave, which interestingly enough was a familiar one for me from when I was an athlete, because you know that zone you get into? Because that was
Yeah,
basically a type of meditation. So when I first discovered, I'm like, oh, wait, meditating is just like the second mile when you're running 5 miles, right? There's that feeling you get. But you go into the theta brainwave where you can access the subconscious, and then we figure out what did you believe when you were 3 for like 5 minutes that's throwing a wrench in your life now.
was this your dream job growing up?
Well,
Did you have something else in mind?
I was going to be a virologist.
Ah, and this took you away from that?
Many things did. Being allergic to modern medicine did. I didn't want to work in an industry that couldn't help me.
Right.
But the cool thing is, I've learned how to actually scan a person's body, and I still get to work with viruses, but on a completely different level.
One of the things I talk about a lot is dreaming big. A
Mhm.
lot of people in this world are so afraid to dream big. And I ask this of most of my guests. Why do you believe that most people are so afraid to, like, no matter how young or old they are, just put their dreams out there and just let it take flight?
I mean, number one is you're afraid you're going to get made fun of, especially when you're kids and your dreams are kind of weird. But also, because I do sessions on this topic, right? Because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and what you find out is more people are actually on a subconscious level more afraid of success than are of failure.
Really?
Because we know what failure feels like, right? We're like, we
Right,
actually
right.
know. But success sometimes will have all these extra things and things to manage and pressure.
Why is success so weird, especially to entrepreneurs like I? Um, and I can feel that response that
Mhm.
success frightens the daylights out of you. Failure is what you're used to. It's what most of the country and most of the world is used to. You recognize that feeling and you get over it. But on the other side of that coin, reaching for that success, using
Mhm.
that as a driving force, and when you get that first taste of it, it does frighten you. Why do you think it frightens so many people?
Oh, because it's finally real. It's a different feeling. Like if you've been dreaming towards something and
Hmm.
you've been looking toward it to a long time, looking forward towards it for a long time. For some people, it's like, what do I do with it now? I've actually talked to people who like I've planned my whole life into this one age, and I reach my goals. Now, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something that Jody has said to me so many times over, that she said, you know what, I've reached my goals. Now I want to see you reach yours. From a man's standpoint, when you hear those words coming from someone very, very significant to you, in my case, my wife, the attitude that a man feels when he hears those words from his other, it makes him believe that he can scale mountains.
Well, and to speak to that point, part of the reason I started Let's Get Weird Together was because my partner and I are doing retreats based on some of those topics a couple times a year. And this is sort of an add-on. So he's on my guest because a year ago, we were kind of having a conversation at this retreat. And he says, if you keep taking me to these, I'm going to have to become a retreat leader. And I'm like, well, what would you talk about? And he's like, BDSM. So that's sort of how all of that began. It's a side effect of me helping him follow one of his dreams, because he is someone who, was kind of had completed all of his dreams by the time I came back into his life.
What gave him this one? What was like the one thing that gave him this one where he said, you know what? I can dive into this. I can go after this.
Well, part of it is because I'm like, I'll help you do it, because I'm the entrepreneur. He's worked at the same job for 20 years. And I am the daring wild one who's like, I know how to create and build these things. So if this is your dream, we're going to create and build it together. And it's something that we both participate in. Like, we've both been active in the community for 20 years. I actually will do demos at parties with this organization that does community outreach.
Tell me about the House of Kellen. How'd you come up with the name and everything from there? How did that get started?
So my great-great-grandmother Kellen was born in a place called the House of Kellen in Luxembourg, and she's one of my spirit guides. So I named it after her.
Beautiful. Beautiful. If y'all haven't had a chance to check it out, you can see the link on the YouTube page, houseofkellen.com. And if you want to want to completely heal, but use a few weird ways to do it, laughter is one of them, I suggest you give this young lady a follow. Marie Miller joining me here on the Brian Snow Show. Once again, houseofkellen.com is where you can go to learn all about Theta healing. My dear, it has been such a pleasure and a delight to have you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where sports is the base, life and fun are the results. This is the Brian Snow Show.